They never stop, Josh. They make the trade yesterday. I guess where there was smoke, there was fire. They wanted the quarterback. They made the move for the quarterback. But now the domino effects begin. Before we get your opinion on the trade, Sam Bradford's mad about the trade. Some reports that he wants to be traded himself. This is one of those situations where did they think about the consequences of rocking the boat like this?
Yeah, and one thing, just to preface this thing, I really don't mean to blast Sam Bradford because he really is a guy that says and does all the right things, not just publicly but behind closed doors. Guys like him as a teammate. But it kind of blows my mind if he's really that shocked by this because the Eagles gave him a contract where they can get out of it after 1 year. I mean, if a team's not willing to commit to you for more than 1 year, do you really think they're that invested in you and really want to see, okay, we're going to give this guy a few years to see if he can develop? I mean, the long-term interest for him wasn't there. That's why he signed a 2-year deal and a deal that the team can get out of after 1 year. So it's really shocking to me that if he is that upset and that surprised by this, that's pretty surprising to me.
I agree with you to some extent. I guess he understands. Look, I signed this deal, but it's like a prove-it deal. Give me the chance to prove to you that I deserve that second year, and then maybe we work on an extension, not draft my replacement and trade up to do so. That is a little different situation, right?
I see what you're saying, but I don't think this changes the fact that he's going to be a starting quarterback. I mean, I don't think that.
Yeah, he might be the starting. He might be the starting. Josh, he might be the starting quarterback, but does he have any chance to prove to them that he's the guy? What if he goes out and has a Pro Bowl season? They go 10-6, win the division, and they win a playoff game. Do they just let him walk and say, "Hey, we drafted Carson Wentz, we have to play him"?
Well, two things. A, if he does have that kind of Pro Bowl caliber year, I do think that they would reconsider, okay, do we want to keep him on and renegotiate his deal? But also, he's not just playing for the Eagles. Now he's playing for his future. But that's how it's always been. He's always been kind of playing this year, this 2016, he's always been playing for kind of the long-term future of his career, not just for the Eagles, but for other teams. Because even if, for whatever reason, he played pretty well, but the Eagles just didn't want to commit to him, he's still playing. He's putting on film for the rest of the league. So I understand that what you're saying about drafting a guy who it appears it's pretty likely that he'll replace you. But to me, it doesn't change the fact that you still have the season to prove whether or not you're a franchise quarterback, to prove whether or not this team should keep you around. So I could understand if he's a little frustrated by trading up to draft a quarterback, but I just don't think it should be that surprising that they would do so to him.
Yeah, the surprise factor, I agree. I'm not. I'll tell you, Josh, I'm not. I don't agree with the trade. I just don't. I think I don't even know if they gave up too much. I just think they're reaching for guys who I'm not sure that either one of these guys are going to be much better than what you have. I think in football, everybody wants the quarterback. The problem is about 5 of them exist on planet Earth, and yet everybody thinks you got to get that quarterback. You got to get that quarterback, and everybody reaches to try to get a guy who doesn't exist.
Yeah, and I think we're going to look back at this draft 5 years from now and really going to look at and how this is a draft that really showcases how much teams are willing to reach for a quarterback. I mean, I think it's pretty much a consensus that Jared Goff or Carson Wentz is not a top 10 overall prospect in this draft. I don't think you're going to find that many people that will put Paxton Lynch maybe in the top 30 or 32, but he's a guy that could even go into the top 10 with the rate that these guys are going at. So I really think it's a matter of not, okay, Carson Wentz, Jared Goff, these guys are the right guys for us. I think it's more of a matter of we need a quarterback. These are the best guys we can get. And that's why I thought it was kind of funny when Howie Roseman was talking about it's a unique situation, that we can move up to get one of these quarterbacks. Well, the reason you can move up is because these guys aren't as good as the top quarterback prospects usually are. Like last year, Tennessee, they did not want to give up that number 2 pick. They wanted to draft Marcus Mariota. That's why the Eagles didn't get up there, was because the Titans really wanted to draft Marcus Mariota. These teams now aren't that, obsessed with, okay, Browns, you know what? The Browns need a franchise quarterback. I think that's also indicative of the quality of these quarterbacks, that the Browns need a franchise quarterback, but they still traded down to accumulate and stockpile picks.
I agree with that. Yeah, I said that earlier, too, was the Browns, who need a quarterback desperately, were willing to get out of that spot because that's what they thought of their options right here. And, the Eagles, the best scenario for me, I don't know if you agree, it sounds like a lot of people seem to agree, the reaction hasn't been very positive. Like when you trade up for number 2, mostly you would think, well, positive. We got to get some, a guy that we really like. I'm surprised that the narrative has been so negative, but you had 8. You get a player there. You evaluate Bradford. If Bradford's not your guy, then next year that means he wasn't your guy because your team probably wasn't any good, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing, that other thing about how Howie Roseman was talking about how it's a unique situation for the Eagles to be in the top 10. Well, first of all, you traded to get up into the top 10, so it's not like you just got a top 10 pick. But second of all, I don't think the Eagles are going to be very good next year. I mean, I don't think it's a stretch to say that they're going to have a better draft pick when they finish the season as they did this year. Obviously compared to the 13, not necessarily number 8. I mean, you have a huge question mark at head coach. You're not really sure. You think Bradford could be pretty good for you, but, I mean, I think it's fair to say you have a question mark at quarterback too. So if you have a question mark at quarterback and head coach, I mean, how much confidence can you have that you wouldn't have a relatively high draft pick? So, I mean, I thought there were a few kind of interesting, to say politely, few interesting things that Howie Roseman said yesterday.
Not to mention what he said a year ago, where he didn't think it's smart to mortgage the future to go get one player.
Yeah, and that's. I really wish. I just saw that quote this morning, and there's that article that was in. I'm really upset that I didn't see that yesterday before we talked to Howie, because I would have loved to ask him, okay, last March you said when a team trades up for one guy, it's usually not good for the team trading up. Well, if you felt that way last year, then what's changed? So I think it's ironic, to say the least, that the Eagles would make this deal a year after Howie said something like that.
Your thoughts on the deal, Josh? Did you like the deal? I mean, I haven't really asked your opinion on it yet.
No, I'm not a fan. I'm just not a fan of trading up in general. I mean, I'm a guy that I actually think that I'm more willing to trade up than a lot of people to go get that franchise quarterback. But when you have these 2 quarterback prospects who, when you just look through the last 5 years, they aren't rated as high as the quarterback prospects in almost any of the years, except I think 2013, whatever the really weak year was. But these aren't Andrew Luck, RG3, Marcus Mariota, Jameis Winston, Cam Newton. All these guys were rated higher than these 2 guys, and even guys that weren't as good, like Blaine Gabbert. So I don't think that. I'm not a fan in general of trading up. I'm a fan of doing the opposite of what the Browns do, trading back, stockpiling picks, because the draft can be such a crapshoot. So really the best way to attack it, I think, is just to stockpile picks and increase the chances of you hitting on someone just by having more guys that you can draft.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of it either. And again, I think it's this ghost that you got to have this franchise quarterback, and I don't know that guy exists. The fans always want the guy they don't have. And my kind of question was, if you ended up trading up and got an Alex Smith, who was the number 1 overall pick, or an Andy Dalton, fans aren't happy with Alex Smith and Andy Dalton. They want better than that, and those guys are good. But that's the league is those guys. They are the league. The exceptions are the guys. And quite frankly, Josh, the playoff field last year, half those quarterbacks, Brady, we know where he was drafted, Wilson, 3rd round, Bridgewater, end of the 1st, Rodgers, end of the 1st, Pittsburgh, Roethlisberger, there was 3 quarterbacks in that draft. They didn't go crazy and get the top 2. They waited for the one to fall to them. They've been okay with that. The teams that have been patient, quarterbacks have fallen into their laps. The other teams go reach, and that's what I think the Eagles did.
Yeah, and I understand. I mean, because if you find your franchise quarterback, you really can't give up too much for him. But I think there's a difference between, okay, we think this is going to be a franchise quarterback, let's go get him. I think there's a difference between that and then saying, okay, we need a franchise quarterback, let's just get the best guy we can. I mean, I think there's a clear difference between those 2 approaches, and I think the Eagles chose the latter, which is another reason why I'm not a very big fan of this deal for them.
Hey, if you trade up and you told me you traded up to get Andrew Luck, that's a different story. And in the year that somebody else traded up, the one team got Luck, the other got Robert Griffin III, and right now I feel like the Eagles are going to be the one with Robert Griffin III.
Yeah, and Robert Griffin III was, I mean, he was pretty highly touted too. I mean, these guys, Carson Wentz and Jared Goff, aren't even close to what the prospect of what RG3 was. Now, maybe RG3's career goes differently if he's handled differently early on, but these guys aren't even close to the prospect coming out of college that RG3 was. I mean, again, these guys aren't thought that relative to the other top quarterback prospects in the last 6 or 7 years, these guys aren't thought of that highly.
Josh Paunil has more on the trade with the guys at PhillyMag.com. Birds 24/7, where it really has been. Birds 24/7. It has been a wild couple days. They now own the second pick in this year's draft. Josh, we'll talk soon, pal.
Sounds good. Thanks, Mike.